Okay, this is the tutorial for the VW Beetle Photoshop project. First, I want to take my 3 files that I need for the project from Edmodo and save them onto my computer. So you need a background, a spotlight background, you need a VW logo, and you need the Beetle. So you can choose any of these spotlight backgrounds. It doesn't matter which color that you choose. You need one of those, you need the VW logo, and you need the Beetle. So I'm going to go and start with the Beetle. I'll click on the name beetle.jpg, right click, and save picture as. I'm going to save it to my documents, and you should do that on your computer as well. Then I'm going to open up the VW logo by clicking on the name, right clicking, save picture as, and once again saving that to my documents. And you can choose any of these spotlight background colors. It doesn't matter if it's this yellow, the dark blue, green, this teal blue, this maroon type color, or purple. I'm just going to do the purple, so I'm going to click on that, right click, save picture as, and save it to my documents. Alright, now that I have all 3 of the items that I need for this project saved onto my computer, I can minimize the Internet Explorer in Edmodo and go into Photoshop. Remember, to get to Photoshop on the school computers, you need to click on the Windows icon in the bottom left-hand corner and go to Applications, and it should be under Adobe Photoshop. When Photoshop opens, the first thing I want to do is to open up the Beetle. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and then navigate to where I saved it, and remember I put it in my documents. And the Beetle JPEG is what we're opening. And then the second thing I want to do, and I need to do this all the time, whenever I open up Photoshop for the first time, this is the first thing I need to do, is I need to right click up here where the tool is showing that we have selected. Just right click on that area and reset all tools. What that will do is make sure that all the tools in Photoshop are where they need to be in case anyone on their computer was changing the settings on Photoshop that used it before you. So we reset all the tools, and now we want to unlock this layer, this background layer. Remember, the first layer that imports into Photoshop is always locked, and we want to get rid of that. So we're going to double click and rename this layer Beetle. Alright, we're going to then create a new layer, and remember this second icon in from the left looks like a little page. That's the create new layer icon. So I clicked on that, my new layer appeared, and this is going to be where I paint my car. So I'm going to double click on the word layer 1 and name it paint. Press enter to get it to stay. Okay, this is the layer that we're going to paint on our car. We do not paint on this layer. If this layer is highlighted, the car layer, then we will not be able to edit our paint. So you want to make sure that you're on the paint layer and that you are using that layer only when you're making color on your car. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and select a brush tool. So that's this one right here. Looks like a paintbrush. And we're going to choose a hard brush. Remember, a hard brush is any of the ones that is a solid dot. It doesn't have the fuzzy or blurred edges. So I'm going to choose this one right here. And you can click on that little arrow again to make that go away. Alright, and now we're going to choose a color to paint our Beetle. And you can choose from over here or in the swatches. I like the swatches because it's a little bit easier to get to. Now, when you're thinking about what color to paint your Beetle, think about what color you made the background. I decided I was going to use that purple background. If you look over back on Edmodo, I chose this one right here. So what colors go well with purple is what I'm thinking of. Okay, so I'm actually going to do a lighter color purple that will match well with this background. So since we're making an advertisement for this VW Beetle, we want the color that we paint the car to look similar or look good with the background color. So I'm going to choose a light purple over here. I think this one right here. And you see that it shows up over here. That's how I know that it's selected. Now, if for whatever reason this is gray when I click on one of these colors, if it doesn't change the color that I want it to, then that means that our image is in grayscale mode, and we want to make sure that's in RGB mode, RGB color mode. So the way that you change this is by clicking on image mode, and mine's already there, and yours should be too. But if by chance it's gray, then we want to make sure it's not on grayscale and RGB mode. All right, I've chose my color, and now I'm going to make sure that I'm on my paint layer, and I can start to paint my car. I'm going to make sure that I have this navigator open, and if you don't have your navigator, remember that you can always go to Windows and then make sure you have the navigator so that you can see where you're at, and I can zoom in. So I'm going to start over here on the side of the car, and I'm simply going to start painting in my car. Now, think about your car and how you want it painted in. Things like the headlights, those aren't going to be painted in because your headlights on an actual car, they're not the same color as the body paint. So you're just painting where the body paint of the car would be. We want this to look as real as possible, as if it has a real paint job. Okay, I also left out that VW logo because that's not going to be painted. That's like as if it was on the paint job. Now you can see it's not perfect right now. We're going to fix that up. It's not a big deal. We're just trying to get the majority of this painted. Now one trick I want to show you with the paintbrush tool is that if I want to paint in a straight line, if I click once right here, hold down my shift key, and then click somewhere else, it creates a straight line. So that's a really good way to get these edges nice and clean. And I can get close to that area down here that's going to be painted. So I'm holding down shift and just doing a whole bunch of straight lines here. You see how it's creating that straight line every time I click. So I'm holding down shift and just clicking to add to it. Okay. You can always use the brackets on your keyboard to make your paintbrush tool bigger or smaller. So that's the bracket on the right hand side, and this is the bracket on the left hand side. So I'm going to go up a size just to get this all purple, and then I can start to make it smaller again to get the details. And just remember, you can press down that shift key to get it looking really nice and clean, straight lines. You're going to do all of the areas on the car that have paint on them as if they were the paint on the actual car. When I get to the place where I want to see more of the car, I can always just click and drag in that navigator box on that red rectangle and move it to where I can see, and continue painting on the. I suggest going around the outside edges of the area and then filling it in, similar to as if you're coloring with a marker or a color pencil, you know, coloring the edges and then coloring it in the details. You can always zoom in on the navigator by clicking on the big little mountain icon, or the big mountain icon. The little one makes you zoom out, the big one zooms in. And I can click that red rectangle and get right to the area that I want. Remember, you can always change your paintbrush size. When your picture looks pixelated like this, don't worry, it's not messing up or anything. That's just how the image looks when you zoom in. I'm still holding down that shift key to get those straight lines and using my bigger bracket on my keyboard to make my paintbrush bigger. Alright, we may want to make sure that we don't forget the side mirrors here. Those would be painted as if they were on a real car and you had body paint on the mirrors. So make sure that you are coloring those in as well. And it looks like there's a little edge over here as well. I'm going to make my paintbrush really small and get that edge all the way down. Make sure I colored all the pieces. Alright, once you have your car mostly painted, then you can start to look for the imperfections and just cleaning it up, making sure that you get all the little areas that have paint on them, and using the eraser tool to fix any mistakes. So let's say that, and I'm actually doing this kind of messy on purpose back here so that you guys can see me use the eraser tool. I'm just going to go over here, and just like the paintbrush, I can use the bracket key to make the eraser bigger or smaller, and I can go back in here and erase out any of my imperfections. I can also use that shift key again to make straight lines. So I'm fixing up this tire area. And in the front here, kind of made a mistake here, so I'm going to fix that up. And you're just touching up all the little areas. Make sure that you get all the pieces. I know that this is tedious, but the more realistic you make it now, the better it will look at the end. Alright, looks pretty good now, so I'm going to take the opacity of this layer down, just like we did when we were coloring the black and white photos, to make it look more realistic. And you can see now that we can see through to some of the details, it actually looks like I painted this car a different color. So if we take the navigator away so I can see the whole picture, and I'm actually going to click on this little eye icon, and I'm going to do it several times so you can see the difference. This is going to make the layer that I just made invisible. So if I click on the eye icon in that layer, on the paint layer, it makes it go away. I have a silver car. That's what I started with. And now when I click on it again, it'll make that layer appear, and now I have my purple car. So this is how advertisements actually do this. Instead of actually having 30 different cars in different colors, they actually Photoshop them to make them look like they're the color that they want to advertise. Alright, so good, that's great. We've got the color of the car that we want. That's the car that we're going to advertise. So what I want you to do now is to save this. So go to File, Save, and it's going to save it as a PSD file, a Photoshop file. That's great. That's what we want. And just click OK when this Format Options box comes up. If by chance you don't get to a period of time where you are done with this coloring in one class period, to get the exact same color to paint with on your paintbrush, you can, when the opacity is all the way up, use the eyedropper tool by clicking on the foreground color, getting this little eyedropper and clicking on the color, and it will automatically make sure that you're on the right color. So if I clicked over here on white, that would make it white, but if I click back on the color that we were using, it gets that exact same purple so that I won't mess up, and click OK. So that's only if you didn't finish in one class period. Alright, so I'm turning my opacity back down so it looks realistic. I saved it already, but I also want to save it, or I also want to merge the layers so that I can use this image on my new background. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to Layer and Merge Down. And I'm going to File, Save As, and this time instead of the PSD, I'm going to save it as a JPEG. Not JPEG 2000, just JPEG. And so it's going to be called Beetle Color. And press Save. And then this JPEG options box comes up. Just click OK. And that's the end of the first part of this tutorial. Make sure that you watch part 2.